Hi, this is Tara. Welcome to Sky Gazing. Today, let's study Sutra number 2.11, the 11th Sutra of the Sadhana Pada in Patanjali's Yogasutras. What does he say? He said, dhyāna-heyāḥ, tat-vṛttayaḥ. Dhyana is meditation, heya is to overcome, tat, this vṛttayaḥ is the vrittis. So Maharishi Ved Vyasa explains that their modifications are destroyed by meditation. What modifications? The modifications of the afflictions, which we have just been studying, which are essential, are attenuated by the yoga of action, that is Kriya Yoga, which he began the Sadhana Pada with. And having been so attenuated, are destroyed by the high intellection of meditation. So first, Kriya Yoga attenuates them, that is, constrains them, diminishes them greatly. And these are destroyed by meditation. They are not completely destroyed. The seed power is destroyed, essentially the potential to germinate. And so they are rendered potential so that the seed power, as it were, is burnt out. Swami Satyananda says the modifications of the kleshas are reducible through meditation. But he also says the 11th sutra actually should have come before the 10th one. My recommendation is, if you had to read one sutra, I know I say this many times for different sutras, but if you had to read one sutra and purchase a book just for the sake of that one sutra, it would be Swami Satyananda's 4 chapters on freedom to read Sutra 2.11, because the way in which he explains how afflictions can be removed is so comprehensive, so detailed, and the instructions are so clear that this is a very, very valuable bhashya on that sutra to read. So the 11th sutra, he says, should have come before the 10th. Why is that? Because the 5 kleshas have 4 stages, namely latent, that is potential, attenuated, constrained, alternating. They move between latent and attenuated and active. So this, he says, happens like a stream gushing out of a mountain and gradually becoming larger and larger as it reaches the ocean. And he says you can understand your kleshas by just observing them. They are not only in the subconscious mind, they are also in the conscious mind. And from the active state, they need to be brought down to the alternating state, from the alternating state to the attenuated state, and attenuated state to the latent state, where they are not able to germinate. So we cannot see the stages of the different kleshas in the conscious and the subconscious levels of the mind. All of them can be brought to the latent form from the attenuated form. Thus, by meditating upon the various stages of the kleshas, they can ultimately be annihilated. So this includes the evolutionary process as well as the involutionary process. From avidya to abhinivesha is the evolutionary process. From abhinivesha to avidya is the involutionary process. These are the various stages in both the processes, such as subtle, active, and so on. So we cannot see the kleshas unless we are very careful. Okay, so we think that we have overcome them, but we don't actually, until you reach a stage of samadhi, like he says dharma mega samadhi. It's only there that it's actually genuinely burnt up. So until then, your belief that you have overcome all these kleshas or particular kleshas is very superficial for all of us. So a spiritual aspirant will find that for many years the vrittis don't rise, and then suddenly you're faced with this trigger, and then the unconscious becomes subconscious, the subconscious becomes conscious. So he says everything has 3 states. It's capable of production, but it's not producing, which is the latent state. It is called the then when it produces, it is active, and when the seed becomes incapable of producing anything, it is called scorched or finished. So in order to scorch the seed of klesha, one must understand that the whole involutionary process in action, not just intellectually. It is not an intellectual process, so because here the abhinivesha has to be resolved back into dvesha into raga into asmita into avidya, and then avidya has to go into vidya, knowledge. So thus the aspirant has to cut down this entire tree of kleshas, but he says this tree is actually upside down. Okay. So dhyana reduces the manifestations of the kleshas and includes this observation. You have to really understand and see how these kleshas develop in us. So that is actually the function of dhyana, that is meditation. So he says, in the practice of antarmana, you will find these active vrittis coming up, and you have to suppress them. When you practice observation in this way, then you should observe all the thoughts, good and bad. When kleshas are brought down to a latent condition, then you start the process of viveka or discrimination, which takes you into Raj Yoga or the method of Kriya Yoga. So basically, what he's describing here is this. He's telling us it's not as easy as it sounds. You've got to use almost, while it looks like, and many commentators will tell you, Patanjali is giving you alternate techniques. What Swami Satyananda is telling us is that you need to use all these techniques to weed this out of our system, because the kleshas are so deeply ingrained. And once you use this process of meditation, observation, you use Kriya Yoga, then you start Raj Yoga, you start Viveka. All of this effort put together is what is going to rid us of the afflictions. And he says, if you just directly try and apply Viveka, it's not going to work, because without this process of dhyana and observation, Viveka will fail, because you haven't really understood what it is you're applying your discrimination to. So this kind of dhyana, he says, is not one-pointedness. It is not ekagrata. It is antarmana, observation of the modification of the kleshas. So by close observation, vrittis go back to the attenuated state, then into the subtle state. Then you become spiritual aspirants who practice meditation, and then you become calmer. Then the mischievous mind is sort of settling. Then you are able to practice discrimination and Kriya Yoga. This is not because you're actually free of the vasanas, but because the kleshas are getting subdued. Therefore, the aspirant is peaceful and tranquil. Through meditation, one overcomes the tensions created by the kleshas. Viveka should be introduced once this has taken place. So, for instance, we have attachments, right? And if we can use Kriya Yoga to overcome these attachments, because essentially what we're doing is we're trying to push all these kleshas back into the original cause. And what he's basically saying is, you cannot fix an effect. You cannot fix it at an effect stage. You have to take it back to the causal state. So you will have complete knowledge, but this is very rare. And so in the 10th sutra, the one we just completed, he says, you understand this process, and in the 11th sutra, the aspirant should retire into seclusion, use observation to eliminate the kleshas through these techniques. So the kleshas in the subtlest form, he says, are absolutely psychic. They are embedded in our life. The process of eliminating them is twofold: dhyana and viveka. The former is the method of Raj Yoga, the latter of Jnana Yoga. Side by side, karma and bhakti yoga will also have to be practiced, because sometimes the explosion of pressure is so great that it catches you unaware. You may not be able to go back to seclusion once more. So karma and bhakti yoga will be of tremendous help. They will boost that. So he says it's difficult to observe these subtle kleshas to find out whether you have them, because they are in your inner nature. It will be said in a later sutra that these obstructions or hindrances must be completely removed. Swami Vivekananda says, by meditation, their modifications are to be rejected. Meditation, he says, is one of the great means of controlling the rising of the big waves. He says, the mind can subdue these waves if you can make meditation a habit for days, for months, for years. You practice so much that meditation becomes the spontaneous default to which your mind basically reverts to. And when you do this, that you're meditating in spite of yourself, anger, hatred, all these kind of afflictions will start subsiding. BKS Iyengar says the fluctuations of consciousness created by gross and subtle afflictions are to be silenced through meditation. Both 10 and 11 point to a way of controlling the thought waves. In 10, mind is controlled by involution, the folding in of the mind. And here Patanjali offers, he says, another method. By this means, the mind's impulses are reduced to their subtlest point, and it is compelled to rest silently in the source of the soul. So afflictions of three intensities: sthula, that is gross; sukshma, that is subtle; and sukshmatma, which is the subtlest of subtle. And tapas, swadhyaya, and ishvara pranidhana eradicate the gross, the subtle, and the subtlest afflictions, respectively. Osho says the outward expressions of the 5 afflictions disappear through meditation. So he gets a bit metaphysical here, pointing out how we cling to life, and life seems to be a chain of endless miseries. And when you reverse that causality, even though we have so much pain, we still seem to cling to life. And the process of overcoming this sort of clinging is that when you look beneath the surface, when you sit in dhyana, you come to a point where everything sort of dissolves and you're able to resolve this kind of clinging to the afflicted states. Barbara Stoller Miller says one can escape the effect of their turnings through meditation. Patanjali seems to delineate 3 stages for the elimination of the corruptions: first by Kriya Yoga, second by meditation, and the third only by the total disappearance do the afflictions cease with the complete cessation of thought. Thank you so much for listening. Come back tomorrow for Sutra number 12.